don't mind me if I cough. I'm a little sick. What did Future say? He was like, I'm sick. I need to find me a wife. Oh, okay. All right. Anyways, hi, my name is Matt, and I think the genre of humanity is changing live in real time before our eyes. And what I mean by that is that, like, when you think about the genre of any sort of story, right, like any game, movie, book, whatever kind of narrative, that genre is defined by how characters interact with the environment that they're in and the setting that those characters are in. And that setting and environment and the culture that those characters build around that environment is kind of, in a subtle way, always defined by the tools that they have at the time, right? Like, you would not expect to hear about a plane in a spaghetti western because the tool hasn't been invented yet, if it's like era accurate. The same way you kind of wouldn't expect to hear about a plane in a futuristic sci-fi film, not because the tool hasn't been invented, but like they probably, like in a futuristic sci-fi film, they figured out teleportation, they figured out other means of travel. Like, planes aren't really relevant anymore, and so like the tools are what define kind of like the era of the time, because how people build cultures, and which culture is just an agreed upon way of being by a collective group of people, right? Like, if we were to boil it down, and that agreed upon way of being is going to be decided by a lot of different factors, but like that culture piece in a large way is defined by tools, right? Like, because tools define the kind of skills that we build up, and the skills that we build up define the kind of value that we can produce for other people, and also the kind of time that we're able to spend, like how we spend our time and how we spend our lives. And so the tools that you have kind of define the life that you live to a certain degree, and we are entering into an era where we have tools that are unlike anything that we've ever had before. You could never ask your hammer for advice. You just had to know how to use it, right? Now you could be a world-class starter in any kind of field just by talking to a large language model like ChatGPT or Claude or Bard or whatever else. And like in anything. And one thing that's parroted throughout all of anybody talking about artificial intelligence is, you know, this is as bad as the tools are going to get, which is true. And especially because right now people are kind of scrambling around. Like, some people want to stick their heads in the ground about it. Some people are really angry about artificial intelligence. Some people want to stay on the bleeding edge. I tend to be like a bleeding edge, let's figure out what's going on kind of person, because if you, going back to the genre piece, if you think about like cavemen, right? Like when the first version of fire dropped, right? Like, it's like the second time they ever got fire right. Like, now they know they can do it a second time. The cavemen, they were like, oh, fire, like, they were like, and they stuck their head in the ground about it. Like, the one that people that actually stuck around were the cavemen that kept using fire. Like, fire never disappeared, and neither did the people that kept using it. And so, in regard to the tools, knowing what is relevant and knowing what is the most efficient way to live is what keeps people going. I just read something about like Tyler Perry, like he had like an $800 million studio and like build that he was gonna set up or whatever else. He's like, I'm not doing that anymore, because he just saw Sora, like by OpenAI, which is the text to video model, which is terrifying, by the way. Might be a whole different video to talk about the actual implications of being able to create hyper realistic video just based off of text. Like, obviously amazing things can be done with that. You can make movies, you can make films, you can tell narratives, like, but also, sorry, that's me fighting the cough. The kind of evils that you could commit is insane. But he's like, yeah, so many jobs are going to be lost, right? Because tools define industry, and all an industry is like how people kind of, it's again the culture of organization around a certain set of needs and tools that we have at the time. And so if we're talking about film and media, in an industry where you can now get the primary skill is not necessarily going to be, okay, this is how I handle this equipment or that equipment, or this is, we need to go fly out here to go get this shot or that shot. It's like, no, we just need somebody that can get really, really good at hyper specific prompts. Obviously, that's going to consolidate down and destroy a plethora of jobs and open up a new avenue of jobs, and it's going to open up a lot of doors for people that don't have means and access. Like, the barrier to entry is going to be on the floor, which is going to be wonderful for people that want to start things out. But yeah, like, we're in a world now where things are becoming more and more polarizing very, very quickly. Like, our attention spans as a society have been whittled down to a nub over the past 30 years, right? This is like with the advent of social media, all the other things, like, down to a nub, right? And for us as a society to be like, things are moving really, really quickly, it means that things are actually moving at breakneck speed, and we're getting like 10 or 20 years worth of innovation in a couple of months, or within the span of like a year, right? And so what do we do? How do you produce value when I guess I'll put it like this, like, we tend to value people based off of, in regard to like the kind of value that they can produce for us, in regard to the skills that they might have. And it's hard to sit and be like, okay, like, this is the skills I'm going to develop, because the skills that you develop, right? Say you're like, I'm gonna prompt engineer and and it's like, now that's not really relevant because you get such a good response out of just being able to speak regularly that maybe you don't even need to do crazy prompt engineering anymore. Like, we're slowly hurtling towards our tools being so good that like the tools don't need us to function, which is kind of the point of artificial intelligence. Like, the larger conversation about artificial intelligence that needs to be had is like, what are we building? Which obviously is like, me personally, I think we're shooting for a symbiotic species. Some people think we're making a successor species, which I can see the arguments for. Some people think that we're looking for a superior species, which like will be our god and like overtake us and we'll just be subservient to it. I think the general sentiment is that we want a symbiotic species. I don't know if we've ever had one. Like, hierarchy is baked into the way that we live, right? Like, it's I think a hierarchy is a instance in life and nature, but especially specifically within community of any sort of animal, right? Like, wolves have packs, lions have prides, human beings have social order. Because like, status is kind of baked into how we operate when you're a social species because of the nature of like the need of resources, the need of leadership, all these other things. Like it's baked into relationship. And human beings, in regard, we do not have any creature over us, save for our parents when we're kids. That's the only kind of relationship in our that we like kind of know to be, okay, this person's over me, and we kind of just take that wiring from that parent or that like whatever, that authority figure, and then we just cast that on to the rest of life, right? So like, that's why somebody that like might have a bad relationship with authority might have a bad relationship with authority because they have a bad relationship with their father or their mother or whatever else, because their parents treat them a certain way. They're like, I'm done with authority, I hate it. And then like, they go out into the world, and that template and that blueprint and that pattern they paste onto the world because that's what they know. And so like, that's kind of how we operate. But like, I kind of got off track with that, but like, specifically in regard to the way that like AI is kind of operating, we're looking for a symbiotic species. Like, we want it to, I'm thinking like iRobot, right? Like, people want like care services, people want something to manage their business, people want something that will take care of them. There's a lot of different fields, right? Like, going back to the fire example, right? Like, fire touches the nature of fire as a tool. Fire has a relationship to every industry, like as a tool, right? But its relationship is different. In the culinary field, fire is super duper important, right? In like the marine biology field, I don't know, like, what does fire have to do with how the physics of going in the water, right? But there's some sort of relationship to it. Artificial intelligence and AI in general is like that same way, right? Like, which I hope the point isn't being lost. I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, it's going to touch every avenue of life, right? Like, it's going to touch every avenue of life. The ability to have tools that operate on their own, that like, because the point of this tool is for it to take care of itself and for it to hopefully take care of us. And so that's why I'm saying the genre is changing, because we've never had that before. But like, the best way to kind of stay ahead with this situation is being cognizant and knowing what games human beings play regardless of what story is being told. So games of status, games of, and when I say status, I don't just mean like wealth or whatever else, or like how human beings as a creature deal with status, how human beings as a creature deal with the concept of death at a time. So that would be like, I would take that out to like culture and religion, like figuring out the core things that you find in every point in history. What do you see people always doing? Because those are the things inherent to us, right? There's a reason why, like, any civilization, even if the civilizations have nothing to do with each other, are in two different spots on the timeline in history and have never met, why you'll find a religion there. Why if they're organized and developed, you will find some form of religion. Same thing with, you'll find some sort of hierarchy or status. Same thing with, you'll find some sort of nature about like dealing with the common man and this and the third and all these other things, like those things that are inherent to the way that we operate as a creature, because they're like ultimately like reskins of not only use the word prehistoric, but like primal things about us that we have developed over time. Figuring out those things and like what that is going to look like in the face of these kinds of tools, in the face of this kind of environment, like that is what's going to get you ahead. And so what I mean by that is, if in a world where everybody is putting their head in the ground and going, not everybody, but like many people, like if you are thinking about AI, thinking about artificial intelligence, thinking about like what to do right now, you're early. You're absolutely early, because most people are going to have an emotional response. Most people are going to go, oh, I hate this, or I'm scared of it, or I'm this, that, and the third, and then not look at it again. They will use how they feel about it as a reason to turn their back on it. But the wave is still coming, and the wave is here now. right? The people that are making decisions, because the people that provide the jobs and are making the decisions, like, always make their decisions off of what is efficient in regard to what's efficient for them and their companies and their whatever. And they're like, damn, like, my entire industry is about to collapse. Like, my entire this and this is about to collapse, because the most efficient, especially in regards to like capitalistic societies, like, we're going to gear towards least amount of cost for labor, highest value out of the labor that's being done. And so if I can get the value of a job done from one or two people that know how to prompt well and know how to manage the large language or the text to video or any of the AI tools, that I can get that out of that person, the same kind of value I would get out of a team of 50, and we're flying out to this place to do this, or we're going down to this place to do that. Like, I'm gonna go with the two people, and not knowing what to do about that is bad. But also, it's like a huge chance for leverage and opportunity. But yeah, that's kind of what it boils down to right now, I think. I guess to conclude, one thing I will say is that there are two things that you will always have, things that will always be yours, which is you are entitled to take your action and you are entitled to take your time. Like, you can take action at any point in time. You can take your time at any point in time. And both of those are valid. I tend to be let's go, let's figure out what we can do. And you are like, and when I say that, I mean, like, those two things, you're not entitled to like the fruits of those things. Like, action starts out in fantasy. Time starts out in fantasy. Like, what your concept of time is, what your concept of action is, they both start out in here. And reality is shared real estate. So it's like, what you have an idea, you have something that you want to do, and then you take action in reality, and reality might give you a different feedback than what you expected, but you're still putting out bids for what you want. And if you take your time, while it's not like, I think it's valid enough too, when you go, okay, I want to see how things shake out and make like a more precise decision, or I want to, you know what I'm saying? Like, but again, time is also a matter of fantasy, because you might think you have more time than you do, or you might think like the quality of the time that you have now is like something other than what it is. And so, yeah, I tend to be more like action oriented. Like, even if I'm not like doing things in public or putting things out or doing whatever else, I'm like, what can I learn? How can I do this? How can I do that? Because the games that we play will not cease. The games that we play as a species will not cease. The way that we play them will change though, depending on what we have in order. Because again, the genre's changing. So that's all for this one. Somebody send me soup, please. My head hurts. But yeah, take care, I guess.